So, hello friends. Today we are going to talk about cloud terminologies or the frequently used terms that are used when we are talking about cloud architectures. Now, this is a very interesting thing because some of the things might be very clear to you, some of the things might be new to you. So, let's try to explore clouds and what do we mean when we say cloud. Cloud generally means that when you are accessing your system from your local when you're accessing something from a local system or laptop or PC, that is the local system that we say. And cloud generally means that the system on which you're working or system on which your code is running or your process or application is running is not on your local system, but it is hosted somewhere else. For example, your website, if your website is running on let's say some servers in Singapore, we can say that your website is hosted in the cloud. And whereas if your website is hosted on a laptop or on a PC which is hosted in a basement, it will be called on-premises hardware. So that is the difference between cloud and on-premises. So on-premises is basically in the premises or in your house or in your office, and cloud generally means somewhere else. So somewhere else over the internet. So the basic building block of a cloud is piece of computation. For example, uh, this is called instance or server. This is the component through which we can run our applications, we can run our process, do anything and everything. This is like having a laptop or a PC in the cloud. You can connect with your laptop, connect from your laptop to this instance and run the set of commands. You can run processes or application on this instance and do multiple things. This is called instance or server. Now, in EC2, this is called, in AWS terminology, this is called EC2. EC2. That means Elastic Cloud Compute. EC2. EC2. Now, this is called EC2. Now, this instance or server can have multiple. EC2 can have EC2 is the service which provides us the servers or instances, and there can be multiple types of instances or generations of instances in AWS, like T series, M series, C series, X series, and so on. So T series is the burstable series which provides us different types of memory and CPU combination. So each for every instance you need a few set of things, or for every server you need few set of things. You need particular computation power which is provided by CPU. You need particular memory which is provided by RAM or memory. You need particular disk space for storage. You need storage, and you need network to interact with this. For example, if you have no network, your instance is not will not be able to interact with anyone. Even you will not be able to interact with your server if there is no network provision in your server. So this server is part of the cloud. This server is basically part of the cloud. There are multiple components that are present in the cloud. We are going to explore them one by one. Server is one of the most basic components of the cloud because you are directly interacting with your servers. You are basically running applications on your servers. You are running, you are connecting to your servers via SSH. You are connecting with your servers via HTTP or HTTPS ports to open up any APIs. That is what happens. So instance or server is one of the offerings of the cloud, and for each instance you need a particular set of things like CPU, memory, storage, and network. And AWS has different classes of instances which provides different combinations of one or more of these things, and each of them is configurable to a certain extent. So that this is the instance or the server. Now let's try to understand what are the other things in the AWS ecosystem. So for example, let's take, you have your server S1 or instance I1. Server and instance are interchangeable. We can say anything. You have a server, you have an instance, they are interchangeable. Let's say this is running an application. So let's take an example. You have server S1. This is running application, and someone is accessing this application from the browser by typing, let's take odcjobs.in, and when they type odcjobs.in, our browser is going to resolve odcjobs.in with the name server DNS. It is going to ask what is IP of odcjobs.in. It is going to give a particular IP. Let's take this IP is I1, and then let's this IP1. And once browser knows that its IP is IP1, our browser then connects to IP I1 on the defined port. Let's take this port was 80. Now everything is well and good if our website odcjobs.in is a small website and less number of people are accessing it. As soon as this access on the website or the number of users that are basically interacting with the website keep on increasing, what is going to happen? Each user is going to access some data from our server. Each user is basically interacting with our server on port 80, and each request that is being made to a server takes a particular amount of resources in terms of CPU, in terms of memory, in terms of network. So each request from all the users of our website is going to take some of the resource of our servers, and each and every server has limited amount of resources. It is going to have limited number of CPUs, number of memory, and number of network and storage also, disk. So these things are limited. What is going to happen if this keeps on increasing, and let's say our website became so popular that it surpasses facebook.com in the number of users that are accessing it, and if we continue to host our website on a single server, what is going to happen? Our CPU or one or more than one of the things or the resources of our server is going to get choked. Choked means they are going to get exhausted and our server is going to go down. It is going to crash, or it is going to not satisfactorily serve the request made by all our users. So what we do is, let's say we introduce another server. What we do is we create new server IP2, and it is also running on the site, and this is the server 2 hosting our odcjobs.in. But how is our application, or how is the browser going to know that odcjobs.in, it can either get data from IP1 or get data from IP2? We can do that by using DNS. One of the ways of doing that is by DNS. So it can give, sometimes it can give IP1 and sometimes it can give IP2. And this way it is going to handle the traffic. But let's take the number of users on a website continues to increase. They are increasing leaps and bounds. Every day new and new users are joining, and even 2 servers are not enough to serve the traffic. So we add, let's take 40 more servers. We add 40 more servers. We add many and many servers. Let's take we add around 400 servers. Now we are not going to give IPs of each and every server to the DNS. So what we are going to do is, so the processing was taking time, the request processing was taking time. What we are going to do is, we are going to create a layer between our servers and our users. These are all the users that are trying to access our site. We are not going to ask them to access our site directly. We are going to create a layer called load balancing layer. The objective of this layer, or this load balancer, is basically a set of servers whose sole job is to distribute the traffic to all the servers that are behind it. So for example, let's take, there are 400 servers, or let's take 40 servers. There are 40 servers, and load balancer has, let's take, we are going to write load balancer in short as LB, load balancer. And let's take this has only 3 servers. Since our load balancers servers are not doing any specific job, all they are doing is, as soon as this request comes, they create a connection to this server, get the resource, all the main computation is done by these servers. These are called backend servers. Backend servers. And these are called edge servers. Let's forget edge servers for now. These are called load balancers. So our users are going to interact with the load balancer servers, and DNS is going to have IPs of IP1, IP2 and IP3. Our users are going to interact with only load balancer IP addresses, and load balancer is basically connecting and proxying the traffic to our different backend servers and giving us the response. They are not doing anything in particular. So that is load balancing. They are basically 3 servers are balancing the load, or the load of the incoming request among 40 servers. In this way, we are going to handle our traffic better. So this is load balancer. So one of the reasons for using load balancer is that whenever users are trying to connect to our servers, or trying to access our website, they have to get our IP addresses. If say we had 40 servers, we had to give 40 IPs to the DNS server so that they can get IPs of our servers. Now each and every public IP costs some money. It takes around $500 or any amount, some amount, to get a particular IP address. $500 is a huge amount, not $500. Let's say each IP address, public IP address, takes $5. So why to give extra cost when we can just get 3 IP addresses, 1, 2 and 3, and they are going to do all the work of routing. This is for routing. So for example, this request comes and it is going to load balance across this. It is going to load balance this. So for example, if one request comes to the load balancer, it is going to go to here. Another request comes, it is going to send to second server, and if another request comes, it is going to proxy to third server. In this way, the CPU utilization of all these servers is going to be approximately equal, as each and every server is given equal amount of traffic from the incoming request. So this is the load balancer part. Now let's move on. So now we are going to talk about security groups. So what are security groups? It is basically a layer of access control list, or layer of control layer of security that we can put around any of our instance or cloud resource. For example, this is our instance I1 or server 1, and we have security group which says that uh, inbound 80 and outbound all, or star. Star means everything. So this security group ensures that only traffic coming on the port 80 is allowed to go to this server. If, for example, someone tries to access port 90 of this server, so our security group is a basically a virtual kind of security. It provides virtual security over our instances or over our cloud resources. So it ensures that only 80 port is reachable from outside the instance, and no one can contact port 90 or port anything other than 80 on this server S1, but it allows all the traffic to go out on any port and any IP. So that means if it wants to access google.com from this instance, it can do that. Now, what if we can ensure that allow IP1 to access port 80, and besides that allow IP2 allow traffic to IP2. That means that this is the inbound port. This is the inbound connection. This is the outbound connection. That means our server can only send traffic to IP2. Since we have written allow traffic to IP2, we are only allowing our server to contact IP2. If we want to contact any other server with, let's say, address IP3, it is not going to allow. Our security group configuration is not going to allow this. And similarly, allow access to IP allow IP1 to access port 80. That means only IP1 in so for example, this is the server 2 with IP1. So only this server can access port 80 of the instance, and IP3 server 3 is not allowed to access this instance. Now let's try to get this information from AWS. So for example, we are on the AWS screen, because you won't be able to understand it if it is not shown practically. Now let's try to, this is the AWS management console. AWS is Amazon Web Service, and this is the EC2 section that we have just studied partially. Now let's try to go there. So this is showing instances, and I have no running instance. Now let's try to launch an instance from here. So let's try to Linux EMI. Okay, I'm going to select this. This shows that what type of instance that I want to run. This is retail instance. Let's try to run T2 Nano. Yes. So these are the types of configuration that I told you about. Like AWS supports different type of configuration. In T2 Micro, we have one virtual CPU, 1 GB memory, and similarly there are multiple types of configuration. For example, let's see this C4 large. In this case, we have 2 vCPUs and 3.75 GB of memory. In C4 X large, we have 4 CPUs and 7.5 GB of memory. And let's try to launch this server, and we are going to play around with it so that you can understand better what is the power of the cloud. So let's try to launch T2 Micro. Let's try to launch T2 Nanos. Review and launch. Uh, so it is showing that I'm not this instance is not eligible for free storage tier. Let's try again. Select. I'm going to select T2 Micro. Let's review and launch. Okay. So it is launching T2 Micro, and here you can see that in the security group name is Launch Wizard 1, the security group that we just said. It is saying that type SSH. It is basically a human readable name that we can say. Protocol is TCP. I'm going to explain it later. Port is 22. We are allowing port 22 to be accessed on this instance. So for example, if our instance is this, we are allowing only port 22 to be accessed from the outside world. This means 000 means all IPs, and this 0 means last /0 means all ports. So traffic from all IPs and all ports is allowed to come to this instance on port 22 for protocol type TCP, and it's what is running on port 22. SSH is an SSH service or secure shell service is running on port 22. So let's try to launch it. I'm going to launch this instance. So your now instances are launching. View instances. As you can see, my instance is in pending state. That means our instance is getting created. So the cloud service provider, in this case AWS, this is the cloud AWS. It is finding an instance I1 which I've just launched, and it gives me an IP address, and this is my laptop. I am going to use this IP address and port 22 to SSH to this instance and try to figure out what is happening in the real world. So this instance is saying that it is now in running state. Now let's try to SSH to this instance. This is private IP and this is public IP. So I'm going to use public IP. Let's try to see whether I'm going to access it. I'm able to access it or not. SSH Ubuntu @ this IP. Let's see if we have access to it or not. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. So no worries. Now let's try to see what we can do about it.
Yes, it will get connected.
Sorry. So there is a option called connect. Let's try to connect to this instance. Okay, the name is Ubuntu session SSH client. Client session EC2 serial console. EC2 client connect. So I'm going to use web SSH or connecting to this instance. Let's try to add. So this is the web way of connecting to our instance, and I'm now here. Now let's try to find out its public IP. SSH ifconfig dot me. So it is giving me 13, 12, 206, 125. Now let's try to confirm it with the instance IP that we get. This is the exact IP that we were talking about. So let's try to see its security group. Security group. We should have security. So this is the security configuration of this instance. Okay, so is it? This is the security group that we were talking about. Let's try to. So this is the security group. It says inbound rules and outbound rules, similar to the ones that we have just covered, inbound and outbound. So inbound means how can what are the configurations of allowing or rejecting a traffic to a particular incoming traffic, and outbound rules means what are the configurations to allow or reject outgoing traffic from an instance, from a server. Okay, now let's try to see other things. So it is allowing all traffic. Okay, so it is allowing all traffic and all port. Now let's try to configure this. So this in outbound, it is allowing all traffic and on all ports. So let's see. We are on this instance. Now let's try to search google.com. So I am able to reach google.com and it is giving me a particular response because I have allowed all traffic to go from us from my instance. I have allowed all traffic. Now let's try to restrict this. Let's try to restrict this. Edit outbound rules. Now let's try to restrict this traffic. Add a rule. Now we are going to add a rule. We are going to restrict HTTPS or HTTPS. We are going to so let's try to go to the security group configuration and edit outbound rules, and trying to search for where the option for denying that traffic is. So for example, if we want to restrict traffic, outbound traffic to a particular set of IP address or port, what we can do is edit outbound rules, and currently we have written from all IPs and all ports, we can just remove it and give a particular set of IPs. For example, we can give a particular set of IPs or a particular set of security groups also here to allow or deny a traffic, and this way we can restrict the traffic. So this was the security groups that we were talking about. So we have and this is the load balancer that we were talking about. So let's try to launch a load balancer and see what happens. Now we are trying to create a load balancer. We are going to create a normal load balancer, HTTP HTTPS load balancer. This is test load balancer, and this is network. So I'm going to create the load balancer. Okay. So it's saying that only space is not allowed. Test load balancer, and let's try to create this load balancer. Forward this to instance or target group. Okay, it is needing target group. Let's try to create another type of load balancer called network load balancer. Load balancer, test load balancer, and it is internet facing. We are going to so for example, whenever we want to send traffic to a particular set of instances, what we have to do is, rather than configuring every IP address, each and every instance or server, this is the load balancer that we are talking about. Requests are going to come on this, and we want to send traffic to multiple servers. There is server 1, server 2, and server 3. So rather than configuring each and every server directly in the load balancer, what we are going to create is a virtual collection of servers called target groups. So target group is basically virtual collection of servers. So we are going to create a target group, and let's see what happens. Target group name test target group, and next we are creating a target group. Now it is saying that we are creating a test target group. So we are creating a target group, test target group, and it is saying that attach an instance I1 that we have just created. So we are attaching this instance that we have just created, and then we are going to create the target group. Continue. So we are going to create the target group, and as you can see, our test target group is ready. Now let's try to do something with it. Now what we are going to do is, we are going to create a load balancer. So we are here on the load balancer page. We are going to create an HTTPS load balancer, test load balancer, and now we are going to get it, and now we are going to forward. Now we have created a target group. Now we are creating the load balancer LB, and we are saying that incoming requests are coming on port 80, and we want to forward them to this target group's port 80. Okay. So we are forwarding this protocol, this load balancer's traffic to this target group that we have created, and we are going to create a load balancer. We are going to this, and this. So what is the regions in the cloud? Now this is very interesting, because from outside it can seem that cloud is a single piece of resource that we are accessing, and it has in the cloud there are multiple types of servers. There are servers, there are load balancers, LBs, there are target groups. These are server 1, server 2, server 3. Now cloud itself is divided into multiple portions to ensure that if one portion of the cloud goes down, another portion keeps on running. So for example, our current hosting is being done in the Singapore region. As you can see, Singapore AP Southeast 1. So our servers are hosted in Singapore, and inside Singapore we have 3 places where AWS has its data center. Let's say this is in city 1, in Singapore, in locality 1 and locality 2 and locality 3. In terms of India, we can say that if our servers were in Mumbai, we can say that one of the sub data center or sub-region that we call in AWS terminology is present in Mumbai, Bandra. Another is present in Mumbai, Worli, and another is present in Mumbai, Warsaw. So all these are connected with high high speed internet lines, so that you don't know the difference between if you are accessing servers from Mumbai Bandra, Mumbai Burli, or Mumbai Versova, and servers here, here can connect with one another without any differentiation. They have very high speed links, but this is done. All the regions are divided into availability zones. These are called availability zones or AZ. Availability zones or AZ. This is AZ1, AZ2, and AZ3. This is done, for example, let's take there is some disaster happens in Mumbai Burli. For example, let's take during an earthquake, the data center in Burli is impacted. What will happen is all your servers in these two regions will continue to serve your traffic. So that means whenever you want to have an application which is very much resilient to failures, what you're going to do is you're going to host your servers in all the regions or in all the availability zones. So if you have 3 servers, you are going to distribute your servers equally in all the 3 regions. So for example, if in all the 3 availability zones, so if one of the availability zone goes down, your servers, so for example, this is part of the same ELB. These are the servers that are registered and behind the ELB in a target group. And so for example, if any one of the server goes down, ELB will not send traffic to this server. It will not send traffic to this server. It will continue to send traffic to the healthy servers. So how does ELB know that a particular server is running fine or not? So how it does is ELB or Elastic Load Balancer. ELB is basically proprietary term for AWS load balancers called Elastic Load Balancers, and these are the instances that are behind ELB. For example, this. So how does ELB know that a particular server is healthy or not? So ELB or the instances inside the ELB, they continuously check the health of our servers with various mechanisms. What they can do is they can ping the instances, they can call a particular API slash health API or any other API that you can configure. I'm going to show you how shortly. And they can ping on a particular TCP port. For example, they can check connectivity to a particular port or particular IP, and they can know that if the server responds with the status OK or status 200 in case of HTTP health check, or if a connection is successfully established in case of TCP health check, then server 2 is fine. And if server 2 goes down, then the ELB, when ELB calls HTTP health check or TCP health check on this server, it is not going to respond. So ELB is going to know that this server is not healthy, so it is not going to send traffic to this, it is going to send traffic to this. When incoming request comes, it is going to not send traffic to this, and in the background, it is going to keep checking with the server. These are health checks. It is going to keep checking with the server whether it has come online or not. And let's say this server comes online and it starts responding to the health check. So what it is going to do is, if new request comes, it is going to send that request to the now healthy server S2. Now let's try to create the ELB. Now let's try completing creation of our ELB. See what happens. So it is creating our load balancer. It is saying that our load balancer was successfully created. Let's try to see it. So it is saying that our load balancer is provisioning. Provisioning means that AWS is working on gathering the resources and creating the resources in its cloud environment to ready our load balancer. Once it is ready, we are going to see what we can do with it. is provisioning. You can refresh the status. So in the meanwhile, let's check what are the different components of the load balancer. So this is the DNS name of the load balancer. This is the name of the load balancer through which we can check. This is the domain name or the URL through which we are going to access our load balancer. Oh, since it is not provisioned yet, it is not going to give the IPs. This is the ARN or Amazon resource name for the load balancer. It is the unique identifier for your Amazon resource. Here it says that it is internet facing. That means that public can call this load balancer. And if it is not internet facing, public won't be able to call this load balancer. It can be only accessed in the internal network of the company. So it says that IP address is IPv4. Besides that, it is saying that now let's check other things. It is saying that it is listening on port 80, and let's see the rules. It is saying that it is forwarding our traffic to the test target group that we had created. Let's see the rules. So it is saying that HTTP default action is if requests are not routed, then forward to test target group 1. Here we can create rules. So for example, we can say that if HTTP request method is put. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to add action forward this request to. We are going to add a target group. Since we have only one target group, we can say that we will forward this request to target group, test target group, and it is going to 100% route the traffic to the, here. So this way you can mix and match the rules. You can mix and match the rules. So for example, if you have an ESB or load balancer, you have a load balancer, and for example, let's take /XYZ requests are going. You want to route to target group TG1, which has server S1 and S2, and you want to route TG2 /ABC request. So for example, if our site is odcjobs.in and odcjobs.in, and we want to route this request to target group T1. So what we can say is we can add a condition if path is /XYZ, then we want to route to request target group T1, and if path is not giving another path, so let's save it, and let's try to add another rule and say that if path is /ABC, then we want to forward this request to target group T2. So since I have only one target group, I won't be able to show you TG2. So it is saying that this. So we have created three rules. XYZ will be routed to here, ABC will be routed to TG1 and TG2. Let's assume that. So here this type of routing is going to take place via our target group, via load balancer. And let's try to understand what is behind this test target group. It is going to show us so it is the test target group. Let's try to see what is inside this test target group. It is saying that it has multiple targets. So let's click on this test target group. It is saying that 0 is healthy, 0 is unhealthy, and it is not having any targets. Let's register a target. Let's try to register this instance. Include the spending below. So it is saying that we have total one target, 0 healthy, 0 unhealthy, and we have registered our instance successfully in the target group. So this was the load balancer and target groups. We understand now load balancer. Now let's try to see what all we have covered till now. We have covered instances. We have covered instance type. We have not covered all these. Try to see what other things we have covered. We have covered load balancers, security groups. We have covered target groups. We are now going to cover what are auto scaling groups. So what is an auto scaling group? Auto scaling group. So it means that we have created a pool of resources. Let's take this is the ASG one, and we have created ELB or load balancer. All the requests are landing on this load balancer, and this load balancer is sending traffic to this target group, and behind this target group are my instances, server 1 and server 2. So for example, if the number of requests on my load balancer start increasing, what is going to be my first reaction? What I'm going to do is I am going to launch more instances like server 1 and server 2. I'm going to launch server 3 and I'm going to add that behind target group. So as soon as this server is successfully launched, it is going to start serving the traffic via load balancer, and it is going to balance that traffic. It is going to serve that traffic, and the CPU utilization or the resource usage on this server is going to reduce, since it is now being balanced between 3 servers. Now, what if what if we wanted to automate this behavior? For example, if the number of requests on my servers increase, I want to add more servers. What I am going to do is I am going to create an auto scaling group. Auto scaling group. What this does is it monitors. What we are going to do is we are going to send CPU. This is CloudWatch. CloudWatch is basically monitoring system of AWS. AWS provided monitoring system. Metrics of CPU, memory, and other things are we will configure to send CPU, memory, and other system metrics to CloudWatch, and we are going to create alarms in the CloudWatch. Alarms basically means that if CPU on my server increases is greater than 45% for more than 5 minutes, then this is going to raise an alarm. What alarm is? It is basically an event. It is going to raise an event to let us know that CPU is greater than 45%. Either we can take an action manually on this alarm by launching more instances manually and adding them into target group, or we can configure our auto scaling group on these alarms. We can attach an alarm to an auto scaling group to let it know that whenever this alarm is triggered, you have to add one instance to this auto scaling group. For example, if the number of requests increases, CPU on these servers is going to increase. And since CPU metrics are going in the CloudWatch or AWS monitoring system, uh, the new CPU metrics are going to be greater than 45%. And if this is more than 45% for 5 minutes, it is going to create an alarm. Alarm is going to be monitored by the ASG auto scaling group. It is going to be listened by the ASG, and it is going to take an action to add one more instance, S4, to our in our auto scaling group, and it is going to put it behind our target group. So now now the traffic will be divided among 4 servers, and the CPU on all these servers is going to come down. And if the CPU increases more, then the same process is going to repeat, and it is going to increase our instances by one more. S5 it is going to run. Now this was auto scaling group when the CPU or any particular system metric was increasing. Now let's say, let's suppose in the night the CPU starts to decrease on our website. So the number of users that are using our website keeps on decreasing. So what will happen when our number of users are decreasing? What is going to happen? The number of requests on our load balancer is going to reduce. Since the number of requests are reducing, the CPU usage of these instances or the resource usage of these instances also going to reduce. Since this is reducing, the new CPU metrics will indicate that the CPU is less than. Now let's create another alarm for CPU less than 20% for 5 minutes. Now we are going to create another alarm for CPU less than 20% for 5 minutes, and our ASG is going to be configured to listen to this auto scaling. Our auto scaling group is going to be configured to this alarm also, and on this alarm we are going to take an action of reducing one instance. So as soon as a CPU goes down for less than 20% for 5 minutes, we are going to reduce an instance. So what we are going to do is we are going to reduce one instance. We are going to remove one instance. So the number of the traffic on each server is going to increase, and it is going to increase the traffic. It is going to increase the CPU a little bit. So this way it is going to balance. And even if now if the CPU reduces, so what is it is going to do is another scale down. This is called scale up. We are increasing. This is called the scale up action. When we are increasing, scale up, and this is scale down. We are scaling our servers in response to the system metrics that we have configured, and if the CPU is less than 20% for 5 minutes, it is going to reduce another instance. And so the CPU utilization or resource utilization of existing instances is optimized, and the cost is also optimized, because each and every running resource in the cloud or anywhere takes cost, and we want to optimize the cost. So even if the CPU goes down further, same process is going to repeat, and it is going to remove the instance, and the target group is going to ensure that traffic is distributed in the running instances only. So that is auto scaling. So now we know what auto scaling is. We can configure auto scaling instances. And one more thing that I want to cover is Elastic Block Service, EBS. So EBS is basically nothing but disk that is attached on our servers. So each and every server has few resources that it needs. It is CPU, memory, disk, and network. So we have talked about CPU, we have talked about memory, we are now talking about disk. So disk is a storage which is required a lot. It is used for storing large amounts of data. So we have disk, and we can attach any disk. We can basically, there are two types of disk. One is the root disk, which is the on which our operating system is running. In AWS terminology, it is the root disk. And if you want to add more disks, for example, let's take we want to host a database and it has 2 TB. It is going to store 2 TB of data. So we are going to launch a new disk of size 2 TB, and it is we are going to attach. So this is the wrong picture. It gives the wrong picture. So what this are? So this is our server 1. We are going to launch a disk in the cloud. This is the cloud. So these are not जैसे like on our laptops and the PC, our disks are present inside the laptop or inside the PC. In cloud, that is not the case. In cloud, everything is segregated at multiple places. So for example, your server will be running at one place and your disk is going to be running at different place, and they are going to be connected via network connection. So these are network storage disks, and they are called elastic block storage. So you are going to use them as it is. You're going to use them as they were the normal disks. For example, you can see the number disk attached. So this is not responding. Issues. You can see that here. EF-H. This instance is also hosted on a cloud, but on another cloud service called Oracle. So it is having this. This is a network disk. This is the disks are not present inside the instance. They are hosted separately, and you can have any size disk. Now let's try to see what are the configurations of the disk that on the instance that we have created. Let's try to go to this instance. You can see that our instance ID is this. This is the unique identifier for the instance. Our instance type is T2 micro, and our availability zone that we have just studied is AP Southeast 1A. And this is public IP, private IP. And now let's try to see what are the storage configuration on the instances that we are using. We're going to go to this instance. We are going to go to storage part. Now it is showing that this is the volume that is attached. Now let's try going to this volume. So it shows that the size of this is the volume identifier. This is the volume identifier. Its size is 8 GB, and there are different types of disks. For example, since there were different types of instances like T2, M5, and different types of instances, there are also different types of disks. For example, there are. So, for example, this is the GP2 disk. This is the GP2 disk. There are GP3 disks. These are basically SSDs, solid state devices. There are HDDs, hard disks, which are HD1, and there are other different types of disks. We're not going to go in depth of that. So this is the disk that is attached to the system. Let's see whether what's its status. We can also monitor that. What are the? You can monitor any resource going to its monitoring tab. So we are seeing the monitoring section of the disk, and besides that, these IOPS basically denote what are the how fast this disk can serve the data. So that is the volumes that we have talked about. These are the volumes that we have just covered. Snapshots are basically if you want to take a snapshot or snapshot of the data that is present in this volume, then you're going to take snapshot of that volume. Okay, so these are the snapshot. AMIs are basically the uh, Linux images or the operating system images that you want to run on your instances. And so this is the brief primer about AWS and cloud terminologies associated with AWS and general cloud terminologies also. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much.